All right, so my name is Ray Antonez, Director of Accreditation, and I'm providing this presentation on accreditation updates. So what's new? The main thing is that we've introduced Accreditation Networks. This was released July 26, 2021, and ultimately what we're trying to do is, one, identify accreditation networks, and then group sleep programs that may be under the same ownership or legal entity. So they may or may not, but more specifically that they operate underneath the same policies and procedures. And the reason why we needed to do this is because in the field of sleep medicine, really it's just becoming commonplace for accreditation programs to be associated with one another, whether it's underneath a hospital, a large health system, or a multi-clinic sleep practice. And so those that are in that field where they're underneath a hospital, large health system, or multi-clinic sleep practice, oftentimes there are commonalities. And so in order to improve that accreditation experience by identifying accreditation networks and then grouping these sleep programs to an accreditation network, we can then share these commonalities between these accreditation programs. Now, the one thing to note would be that this replaces our previous corporate accreditation program. For those that are familiar with that, that was for those that owned or managed 5 or more programs with the AASM. What they did was they submitted a single set of policy and procedures. We reviewed that, and then once approved, then disseminated that to the individual programs. So since that allowed the AASM to have a more simple review where we're just doing a single review instead of 5 different individual reviews, we're able to pass a little bit of a discount to those accreditation programs. Now, there are 4 main benefits by introducing accreditation networks. This slide covers 3, and the next slide will cover volume pricing. But really the 3 main ones that we'll notice here is an enhanced application process, aligned expiration dates, and aligned site visits. So this infographic on the right really represents why we needed to move to accreditation networks. The main reason is our application was very linear, meaning even though they had multiple programs associated with each other and they had commonalities amongst those accreditation programs, they were unable to be shared amongst applications. Whereas now, if we take a look at the right-hand side of that infographic, we see that once we've identified the accreditation network and then we group those accreditation programs under that accreditation network, we can now share those commonalities amongst applications. We'll get into the application a little bit more in some future slides, but really just trying to, once again, enhance that application process, reduce duplicative data, and work that needed to be done by the applicant. Second is aligning expiration dates. So now that we can identify these accreditation programs that are part of an accreditation network, when we align the expiration dates in conjunction with the enhanced application process, it just becomes a more efficient reaccreditation application. So let's take, for example, somebody who maybe has 4, 5 different applications with the AASM. Instead of having to do reaccreditation applications periodically throughout the 5-year accreditation term, for example, maybe one is due in 6 months, and the next one due in another 6 months or a year, and then the next one due another 6 months or a year after that. When we align those expiration dates, the applicant is then able to just focus on reaccreditation for all their programs at once. And then again, when we put that with the enhanced application process, where a lot of this data is being shared amongst applications, just makes it easier. And then the last one is aligned site visits. So once again, now that we can group these programs, we can perform a site visit on all accreditation programs that are associated with each other. We've been doing this for corporate for a while now. And when we group them, it just makes the site visit experience simpler. So even though the physical characteristics might be different, the clinical aspect oftentimes shares similarities, especially when it's the same professional staff, technical staff. During that interview process, the site visitor is able just to perform a single set of interviews and then know that that is being shared amongst locations. Now that fourth benefit, volume pricing, especially when we talked about previously corporate was for 5 or more, and they were provided a 10% discount. Well, one, it didn't allow for those who had less than 5 to be eligible for a discount. And then it didn't really incentivize those who had a number of programs with the AASM, maybe spanning way more than 5. So by introducing volume pricing, really any program, as long as they have more than 2, or I should say more than 1, with as little as 2, they'll now be able to participate and be eligible for volume pricing. So if they have as little as 2, they would receive a 5% discount. So creating a pathway for them to be eligible for a discount, and then incentivizing those who have more than 5 or more with the Academy by incentivizing them to continue to pursue accreditation with the AASM. Let's talk a little bit about the application, because we did say that it's an enhanced application process. So we'll get into that a little bit. I do have 3 infographics here, images, in which, remember, what we're trying to do is group these accreditation programs. So on the left-hand side, we do this the same way that we would currently, where we go into our ASM profile and go to our My Organizations page. Now, when we're in our My Organizations page, what we'll notice is that any program that is unassigned to an accreditation network would show up red. At that point in time, we can either create an accreditation network or assign an accreditation program to an already established accreditation network. Now, once we do that, then on the far right here, we'll notice that our My Organizations page will then categorize these accredited programs underneath a created accreditation network. In the application, we're going to notice 2 key areas in which we are sharing data, meaning that we are able to reduce the duplicative amount of data that needs to be performed amongst applications. So this is 2 areas: staff, so staff credentials, licenses, CME, and then policies and protocols. So when we think about it, staff and policy and protocols really is the majority of the application. And so for that reason, now that we're sharing this data amongst applications, once again, really just makes it an enhanced application process. So when it comes to staff previously, even if it was 5 individual applications, staff needed to be submitted for each of those applications. Now, staff is being held at this network level. And so once the staffer has been input, credentials, licenses, and CMEs have been uploaded, then we're just simply selecting from the pool of staff to assign where they're working on an individual basis. And then when it comes to policies and protocols, the vast number of protocols will be network level, and that's going to be represented by this network icon next to those policy procedures. So anywhere we see that, we know that that's going to be a network level document. However, there are specific ones that are not shared amongst applications. We would see that in the example of emergency policies. The reason for that is those you might have a accreditation program that is hospital-based, meaning they're calling codes, versus a hospital-based program, a non-hospital-based program that is going to be calling 911. And so because there's that difference, they would need to upload emergency policies for each location and application. The last thing that's going to be noted in the application is we now integrate with right signature when executing the ASM template BAA. So it's very simple. There's a data field where you input the signee's email. An email will get sent to them. They get directed to right signature, and then they execute it digitally, and then it'll get pulled directly into their application. So this process is very simple now when executing ASM's template BAA. And now there is a way to manually upload a custom BAA. However, when doing that, a fee of $500 will be assessed. And the reason for that is because there oftentimes is a lot of back and forth between the ASM and the covered entity to come to an agreement with a business associate agreement that is going to be executed by both parties, the covered entity and the ASM. So we really do recommend pursuing ASM's template BAA. Our template BAA has been vetted by legal counsel and meets the requirements for HIPAA compliance.